With us today is Mr. Richard Sarkisian. He is the founder of the New Jersey, Pennsylvania Table Baseball Replay League. And what better thing to be talking about on 4th of July than baseball? I saw your post on Facebook. You've been active since May 1984. You've replayed every MLB season from 1903 to 2002. You've created your own game. It probably helps to be an accounting professor to create all these cards year after year. You've been featured in many articles in the Sporting News in 1986, for instance, in 2019 in an article in the Berlin Sun, which I'll put in the description here. Thank you, sir, for spending some time with us today. I know you're looking
You're
for
welcome.
a coach in Harrisburg, the Harrisburg, York area. Why did you decide that this was a project you wanted to take on and perpetuate for so many years, almost 40 years?
Well, I started making games in high school, and in college, I got a college credit for making a game. And we had a league in college, the all-time All-Star League. I have an all-time All-Star baseball game we played, but I always wanted to replay baseball history. And to be honest, in 1984, there was no game. You could not buy the 1903 season, so I thought I'll make it. So I made the 1903 season, and I made the game in a way that eliminated what I considered major flaws of APBA and Strat. I made the game. I found like six guys to start. I used to live in Harrisburg. That's why we have a Harrisburg division. I lived there for 3 years, 2 years in Maryland, and I've been living in Jersey since '88. But the guys in Harrisburg wanted to stay in the league. So we had a division there, a division here, and it's grown from, we started with like six, and now we have 22 teams. It's a replay league, but we have our own teams. We draft, we trade, we sell. We actually have our own encyclopedia, our own league records, our own Hall of Fame, all based on what we do. And even today, I would say 90% of our games are face to face. We have some owners who live far away. We play them by Skype. And these are guys who lived local, moved and said, hey, I still want to play. I got one guy in the league. He's been in the league since the 1905 season. He retired, moved to Florida. He's still in the league. Most of the guys, about more than half the league, has been in since the 1930s. We used to be young guys. I was 24 when I started. Now I'm 63.
Wow.
But I knew when I started, I said it's going to take the rest of my life to do. And here we are, still going strong, still working it good. The game is good. I still enjoy making it, which is one of the keys of the league going on. I make everything by hand, all based on, statistical analysis. And we have roster books and we have the draft. And it's always fun to see a bunch of grown men, most very successful, spending hours trying to build their team and make the trades and win a championship where the only reward is pride. And we have a trophy, but there's no money. The game is free. And I made a lot of friends. The godfather to my oldest daughter is a guy in the league I met 30 years ago when I didn't know him then, but he joined the league and we're really good friends now. So it's kind of nice that we've all gotten together as friends, because the main thing I always say is it's a social activity. That's why I'm really adamant about playing in person. As we get older, sometimes it's tougher. We got one guy who's, 80 and he doesn't get around as well as he used to. And he was saying, if you want, I can play online. We always go to his house to play when he wants to play, because he's been playing 30 years. He lives 15, 20 minutes away. If we got to drive, we got to drive. It's not a big deal, because it is a social activity.
How do you maintain this interest, do you think? I mean, what is that combination of skills that is required of a league manager to keep people on pace and handle any turnover that you have?
It's been tough sometimes. It's always tough finding owners. People think it's a lot of time, and it really isn't. Our season's 5 months long. We play a 72 game season. We allow people to be able to set their schedule up for their schedule. And the game itself is really good. Most of the players in this league played App and Strat and gave that up to play this game.
What are your mechanics? What were some of the things that you sought to address in your game? What is unique about it?
I have a pitcher's card and I have a batter's card. The pitcher pitches and his pitch, the batter reacts to. The pitcher pitches, the batter bats, and I have home field advantage worked in, lefty righty advantages. I think my game, more than other games, defense is really important.
Mhm.
Really important. In our league, the goal is to win a championship. And it's got to be a well-rounded team. You got to have a good mix of lefties and righties. You got to have a. You're not going to win a championship with a poor defense. Might not be a great defense, but you need some defense. You need a good bullpen. You need good starters, and the game itself is played like baseball. We actually use. It's going to kind of funny. We don't use dice anymore. We gave out dice years ago.
Mm.
We all have a deck of 216 playing cards that the numbers are written on that simulate a 3 dice roll. We find it goes faster. Probably when we were younger, we were more volatile, but nobody throws the dice anymore when something bad happens. And it goes fast. A 5-game series is probably a half hour faster now than it was with dice because you don't think about it, but dice is click, 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 click on the floor. Click. Cards are like boom, boom. Here's my pitch, -1. Here's the hit. Ground out plus. We just go boom, boom, boom. And the game takes a half an hour probably to play one game. And I think the game itself is why the league has been successful. And I think I'm pretty good at organizing, and maybe because I'm a college professor and I'm used to organizing stuff, but I'm pretty good at organizing, setting up schedules. And we have all these things worked in that are unique, I think, to our league. Like we have a fake money draft. Like every team gets a certain amount of money based on how you finish. The team that gets the most money is the team with the best record that misses the playoffs. That way there's no tanking. There's no reason to be. So if you have a bad team, which, sometimes you go, oh, my team's bad. You're thinking, I'm not going to trade these guys off because I'm trying to win as much as possible because I'll get more money. So we do little things like that. And you have a 22-team league, but 9 teams make the playoff. The draft is a great time. We have our next draft September 9th in King of Prussia.
Oh,
we all meet at this restaurant bar and they give us a room. It's a fun day. We eat and drink and we bid on the 2004 draft is coming up. And it's a money draft. So it's like anybody could get the people based on how much money you have. Like the last draft, the big guy was Miguel Cabrera, I think was 2003. 2002, I think was Albert Pujols. And those guys cost a lot of money, but there's all different kinds of strategies. I just made a pickup. I just made a trade. I picked up Juan Gonzalez yesterday for my playoff stretch run. And needed a right-handed bat to play some outfield for me. So I made a deal. I bought him for $100 of league money, that kind of thing. So, we're always doing stuff like that.
How do you find the time between when the season ends? I think I read in the Berlin Sun article, it takes you maybe 5 minutes to card some folks, create the card.
Yes.
And how do you ever get kind of critique of the cards? Like this guy's underrated, overrated?
The batter cards are right on the money. The pitchers are sometimes subjective, and I base it obviously on ERA, but also team defense affects the pitcher's card. So some guys will grumble if they have a pitcher who's on a better team defense, so I have to lower his card to equate. We have a system, minuses and pluses. Minuses are good for the pitcher, pluses are bad. The next draft, September 9th, I have all the infielders done, half the outfielders done. I do pitchers last. They're easier. I can do pitchers in a month. And I'm lucky I have a job. Let's just say it's not a lot of hours to be a college professor. So.
Do you use newer data, saber data?
Well, a guy like, here's Juan Encarnacion. Here we go. He's one of my outfielders for this 2003 season. And here's the statistics. I just use basic statistics. The guy batted 270. His card will roughly have 27% hits. He may have a walk rating based on whether he walks above the league average or below the league average. The guy struck out 17% of the time, 17% strikeout. So it's real basic information. Now, we use advanced information when we're drafting and rating, like who is really a good player and who isn't based on, Encarnacion bats 270, but his on base is only 312, which isn't very good. So, it varies. The best player card I make probably ever is Barry Bonds these last couple seasons. I mean, he's a monster. His card is ridiculous. And the card itself, it's hard to explain it, I guess, from here, but the card itself is made in a way to make the game flow. But as far as advanced metrics for making the game, no. I use Baseball Reference as my encyclopedia of knowledge. That has everything. That's crazy. But I used to use, for years and years and years, I used to use Neft Cohen. That was a great book. That and the football book. And then they made the Sports Illustrated football game, which is a great game. I love that game. A lot better than Sports Illustrated baseball. Not a good game. But Neft Cohen, I used that book for years and years and years. The problem now, there's no books. they stopped printing after 2005. And we all use, I mean, we all carry around stuff like this at the draft, or like, look, this guy, look. Now you can't do that. I have to write my notes in a notebook because I can't use that kind of book to write notes in. And these are game making notes even more than game playing notes.
Can you look over the history of your game and note how you've revised it and refined it over time, maybe based on the kind of, the style of MLB play and rules year to year?
Yeah, I would say so. I had to make a stopgap to reduce complete games, for example, for the pitcher, because in our league, at a point, you could pitch a pitcher for complete games as often as you wanted. There were penalties for doing it, but there was no reason to stop it. So what would happen is guys would, would have a lousy pitcher in there losing 18-1, and he would just leave him in there for the whole game because he's like, why waste good innings? So I had to make some kind of boundaries that you didn't do that. And you're always doing that because you got 22 guys who are looking for any edge to try to, win the game. Then the game itself has changed. There's less errors than there were when I started making it in 1903, that kind of stuff. So everything else kind of works itself out.
So as you play these seasons, you're not playing the actual teams, you're playing drafted teams, right? And you retire these folks the year they retire?
Yes, I only make a card. A guy to have a card has to have pitched 20 innings or had 50 plate appearances. That's the bare minimum. And not even all those I make, but the bare minimum is that. And then their careers end. Like I said, we have our own encyclopedia. You can go on our website and see every player who's played our game and what they did in our league, which is pretty cool. Now, obviously, their numbers won't be exactly the same because we don't play a 162-game season. But our all-time home run leader, single-season home run leader, is Willie McCovey. He hit like 35 one season, and no one's broken that yet.
Nice.
And that's going to happen in a table game. A table game is never going to be exactly the same. Like someone once said to me, if they replay the actual season, it would be different. Right. 1974, they replay it in real life, it would have been different. So, somewhat. But it's pretty accurate. Our game's pretty accurate.
How do you measure the accuracy, like plus or minus X number of percentage points based on, your seasons versus the actual seasons and their actual.
Let's see. I have something here. If I can, let me see. Here we go. Every year I do an analysis in our encyclopedia. I have all these different pages I do. So I just completed the 2002 analysis, which is our records, all-stars, league leaders, drafting information. In 2002, our ERA was 4.12. Real baseball was 4.27. That's pretty close.
Yeah.
in our game, we scored 4.44 runs a game. Real baseball was 4.62 runs a game. I think that's within, our OPS was 723, real baseball 748. So I'm always looking to see if it's close. And to me, that's pretty close.
Do you keep track of some of the anomalies that might occur and then adjust or go back and look at how, maybe they were carded?
Sure. I had a tough time with switch hitters for a while. Like, how do you reduce their card? Because every pitcher has a side against lefties and a side against righties. A switch hitter would have an advantage against both. So you'd have to reduce his batter card to compensate for that 100% advantage. You understand what I'm saying? Like his card would bat too high if he didn't do that. So I've always had to play with things like that. I've also played over the years, how does a good defense or a bad defense affect a pitcher's card? Those kind of things. The one thing I don't do, and I'm not going to do, is park adjustment. I don't do park adjustment. Okay. The Colorado Rocky batter, Todd Helton's a pretty good card. I don't adjust for park. But that's true across the board and with their pitching staff too.
In terms of rules, particularly say player usage, things like that, what are some rules? Did you pick up any rules from, say, the other folks, their app or strat leagues or anything like that?
Well, players have ratings, like how much they can be used. Josh Phelps is 2.7. And that would be plate appearances per game. You multiply that by 72. He's allowed 195 plate appearances for the season. As the manager, I can use them any way I want, those 195, And all the players have limits based on what they really did that year. The pitchers can only pitch so many innings based on what they did that year. I mentioned about limiting complete games. If a starting pitcher didn't complete any games during the year, he can't complete any games in this league, things like that. So, yeah, there's lots of limits. We have limits on pinch runners, how many times they can pinch run. Oh, we have limits on positions too. Let's say a guy played the outfield and first base. He played like 100 games at first base and 50 games in the outfield. He's limited to how many games in the outfield he can play. Like a David Ortiz played like 20 games at first. He can't be your starting first baseman all year. That kind of thing.
Now, how do you create a schedule since you're playing not a full, length MLB schedule? You're playing 72 games a season. So how do you create the schedule? Do you get some inter-division play?
Some years we haven't, but we brought it back. We do have interleague play. Currently, we have 9 teams in Western Conference, Harrisburg, York, and 13 in the South Jersey Philly Conference. And this season, 3 teams from each are playing interleague. 4 of the guys met actually a week or 2 ago in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, and they played 9 games. For the most part, we play in division, but the playoffs are everyone's together, and the standings are 22 teams. We figured out that's simpler than trying to figure out conferences and stuff. But we have brought back interleague, and for the 100 seasons we've had this league, I would say 80 of them we've had interleague of some sort. And some of the interleague is online because, like I said, we have about 5 guys who live, one guy lives in Wisconsin, one in Minnesota, one in Florida, one in South Carolina. So those guys play online. But sometimes they come home, like they're from this area. Like one guy comes home for Christmas, so he'll play like 20 games when he's home in person.
For those, when you're playing remotely, when did you start using Skype, and do you have any particular rules for those games?
The only rule, I guess, is that the players agree on the mode of play. A lot of guys like to use what's it called? Rolls. Rolls. It's a computer dice thing, or you can use the cards. Some guys both use a deck. Some guys just use one deck. It's all a matter of what you agree to. I'm not a big fan of online play, but I see we need it for the league to exist. Guys who really play a lot of online, which would be the far away guys, I let them pretty much handle the ruling for how to play.
When you started carding for your game, creating your game, had you already had, you had some experience with how APBA and Stratomatic work, and you mentioned
Right.
Sports Illustrated games. Have you
Right.
kept with the mechanics of more recent games, or
Not really. No. I myself, I'm busy with other stuff too. I have a little family and the job and some other hobbies. I actually had a football league going for a long time. I actually replayed 1945 to 1969.
Really?
Yeah, and it was good. It was good. A good game, a good league, but it got to be too much for me to make both leagues. And I'll tell you, it's such a headache trying to find new people, trying to, and we're getting older, so we got to keep going. Like right now, we have 22 teams, 21 owners. One guy is running 2 teams.
Wow.
Which is not the best case scenario. So we're hoping to find someone, preferably under 70, who can take over the team. Want somebody more long term.
Sure.
I'm 63, going on 64. I figure I got another good 10 years before I start fading. So we'll see where we get to.
Speaking about the older seasons and particularly football, 1945, it's always been a point of contention that creating these older sets, the data, certainly for football, isn't quite as robust as any sport now, even, football in the 60s, 70s, even the 50s. I'm just curious what you're sourcing for data in that immediate post-war.
Neff Cohen was great.
All right.
The Neff Cohen football books were really good stuff. And you're right, 45 was a little clumsy at times, but I made it work. And it's very offensive centric. It isn't like I rated left tackles, that kind of thing. It was certainly, it was easier making the teams. So we had teams, but there was a point of time for a while we did have a drafting league, where I actually did rate, defensive ends and stuff. And that took some research. And to be honest, it was pretty subjective.
Sure.
You looked for all pro teams or Hall of Famers, or you figured, well, if that team was the best team against the run, I guess their defensive line is good against the run. So you'd rate each guy good against the run. Yeah. Not sure how scientific that is, but.
Yeah. But if the results are coming out, and it's a fun game to play.
No, it was good. And the league was fun. Yeah, we had, like I said, you make the game to have fun. I was making the football game because I had my first child and I was like stuck home all the time. And I was like, let me try to make the football game again because I have time. Now devoting it to other things. I have two children now, so I devote it to other things.
So have you had any interest so far in this open position?
We've had some interest. Nobody that's, signed up. They do want to make the commitment. Very flexible as far as the timing. You don't have to play like every week. We need someone who will play around 3 times a month. Plus, doing the research. The research you do at home, that's fun. You're looking up players who you want to draft next season. And then the draft itself, which is an all-day event. But again, that's fun. That should not be considered work. That's a great time. Everyone looks forward to the draft. We get to see everybody. Especially the guys in the two divisions. It's like, hey, here's the one time. Plus, the World Series is played on draft day, which is always fun. Like the teams that make the World Series meet at the place and they play the World Series. If it's a far away guy, then no. But for the most part, yeah, they play the World Series at the draft, which is always fun.
Awesome. Very good idea. And you have a website here, and I'll put the link in the description as well. It goes through your play charts and complete game rule, error charts, the whole ball of wax here. And you congratulate the 2002 champion Ketchup Kings.
Ketchup Kings. He's the guy running two teams right now, too, Ted Griner.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, the website has everything. It has our encyclopedia. It has everything. It has all our files, schedule, roster books. I do a roster book that looks like this. That is all the players. This is a 2004. All the players for 2004 season. Then someone takes that roster book and separates it into who's available and who's on teams already. Then once the draft is done, someone prints up a roster book that shows every team. Like it'll show the players on my team, the players on Ted's team, the players on Bill's team. So when you play a series, you can look to see your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. A lot of information. And a lot of guys in the league help me out a lot doing a lot of the work.
Oh yeah. It's heavy lifting. I mean, it can be, but like I said, it's supposed to be fun, and that's the immersion of it is really what keeps you interested.
And me making the game, it's kind of, I guess, best way to explain, it's like knitting. It's like when I make it, I'm like in a zone of just like relaxing. If I don't work on the game for a few days, I start getting antsy. Like, I got to make some players, and I got my little calculator. I got my charts. And like I said, it takes about 5 minutes to make a batter, even shorter to make a pitcher.
Nice.
So
nice.
And it's cool because I'll be like, oh, look at this guy. He's interesting. And you see the guys and they're interesting to make. And sometimes I'll get bored, I'll be in the middle of making second baseman or shortstops and they all look alike. It's just like,
right.
Anything.
And that's a point. I mean, that, you've got your superstars and your super performers, but a lot of folks, they're journeyman players. They do the job. They're kind of average.
That's right.
So
that's the one thing you learn about this game is if you're a guy in the league or even me, all the players who made up baseball, guys who were solid players. There's so many players I could name. Sherry McGee, I don't remember. What a great player. No one knows Sherry McGee. And one of my all-time favorites, who's obviously considered a great player, but I don't think he's considered as great as some people should. Eddie Collins was a great player. Eddie, I make his card. It's like every year he's such a good player. You ask 20 baseball fans today, who's Eddie? I don't know. I don't know Eddie Collins. Eddie Collins is one of the top 20 players in the history of the game, And those are the kind of things you really appreciate when you make this kind of game or play this kind of game even, because you end up having that player for his career. I had Mel Ott for his career. That was, his entire career. Mel Ott played for me. It was kind of cool to see Mel Ott playing for me. Yeah. I had Mel Ott and Earl Averill in the same outfield for like a decade. I had a pretty good team then,
Nice. Have you been tempted to jump forward to the 2020s here and
we're
Judge Ohtani?
These guys, they're tied into this, and guys are doing things. We're playing the 2003 season, and when are you going to be good again? 2006. Like they're already looking ahead to, and I'm going to try to get this guy in 2006. And the guy who just traded me, Juan Gonzalez, was trying to be good this year. His team imploded, so he got rid of everybody. And he's rebuilding to try to be good next year. He's getting up some funds for the next draft, and we'll see if I make it. Or 23 and 22 is hanging on the cliff as far as making it. But I have a series tomorrow, and that's the thing we do too. We'll meet at diners. We'll play at diners. We'll have lunch and we'll play. So I'm meeting a friend of mine at a ramen noodle bar tomorrow. We're going to have lunch and then we're going to play our series. So that's
Nice.
fun.
Just don't get
But I got
noodles.
to win three. I got to win 3 out of 4 tomorrow to keep my playoff hopes up. It's
Oh,
a
wow.
four-game series,
There you go.
so and that
It,
takes like two hours. 2 hours for the series.
okay. Okay. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, very
yeah.
manageable. One last question I wanted to ask you. Just, I know you're not really carding, like the Yankees and the Dodgers and creating season sets and playing them year to year. But if you were, that concept of normalization as an accounting professor, as a numbers guy, obviously, how might you approach if someone asked you, so to, playing the 27 Yankees versus the 2020 Yankees, for instance, just kind of how might you normalize player performances era to era, or would you?
You can play the game as is. The game is normalized. The only thing I don't do is park factor.
Mhm.
Right. So if I do defense, then it's normalized. If no matter when, no, it's normalized. You could play any of those seasons. You could play. I could take 2003 and make them into the teams, and they would be accurate. They would be
Okay.
fine.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in finding a new
Thank
person.
you. I appreciate it. It's nice talking to you.
Same here, sir. Take care.